Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today, inshallah, we are going to complete our talk about the externalities. In the last class, we discussed or presented 4 types of externalities, which are the negative externalities of consumption, the positive externalities of consumption, negative externalities of production, and positive externalities of a production. Okay? And we had an idea about and examples for or about these 4 types of externalities. So today we are gonna discuss all these 4 types of externalities in detail. Okay? So let's begin with the negative externalities of consumption. As we mentioned before, that the example for the negative externalities of consumption is smoking. When someone in the community smoke, this creates negative impacts on the community, on a third party of the community. So the government should intervene to internalize this situation or to eliminate the negative impacts here by different policies that used by the government. Okay? So let's come back quickly to the negative externalities of consumption. Negative externalities of consumption. Here we're talking about smoking. And we said that the marginal social benefits here is less than the marginal private benefits, because the group who smoke in the community has benefits which is greater than the social benefits because they are enjoying smoking. So when the marginal social benefits equals the marginal private benefits in general plus the marginal external benefits, as the marginal private benefits is bigger than the marginal social benefits. So let us assume this is 10 and this is 6, for example. So it should be -4 here. So the marginal external benefits here is or should be negative. In general, it's positive here, but as the marginal private benefits is bigger than the marginal social benefits, here should be negative. So smoking creates negative impacts, negative externalities on a third party of the community. Okay? If we talk about the positive externalities of consumption, it should be positive, because when we talk about the positive externalities of consumption, like someone who consume something that has a positive impact on the community, like the vaccination, the marginal social benefits is bigger than the marginal private benefits. So let's apply the formula here. The marginal social benefits equals the marginal private benefits plus the marginal external benefits. As the marginal social benefits is bigger than the marginal private benefits, let us assume this is 10 and this is here 6. So it should be the externalities here remains positive 4. So here we have positive externalities of consumption. Okay? Now, let's talk about or in details about the negative externalities of consumption and positive externalities of consumption. Okay? In general, the equilibrium or the maximum efficiency for the consumer occurs when the marginal private benefits equals the marginal private cost. in general, for the person to maximize efficiency, let's talk about the negative externalities of consumption. Prices of cigarettes and the quantity of cigarettes. Here's the demand and supply. For the person, for the private sector, the equilibrium efficiency occurs when demand equals supply, or the marginal private benefits equals the marginal private cost. This is in general. Okay? When we talk about consumption, negative externalities of consumption, positive externalities of consumption, as we are talking about the consumption, we have two demand curves. As we talk about the consumption, negative externalities of consumption, positive externalities of consumption, the graph should include two demand curves, one supply curve. Two demand curves and one supply curve. Okay? Okay. As we mentioned before, that when we under the negative externalities of consumption, the marginal social benefits is less than the marginal private benefits, because as we mentioned that the private sector will enjoy smoking and they get benefits larger than the community, because here we have negative externalities of consumption. So here, this is the marginal private benefits, and the marginal social benefits is less than the marginal private benefits. So the marginal social benefits should be smaller than the marginal private benefits. The marginal social benefits should be smaller than the marginal private benefits. The benefits here represents demand. Marginal benefits is the demand curve. Marginal benefits is represented by the demand curve. The marginal cost is represented by the supply curve. So here, this is the marginal private benefits. So where is the marginal social benefits curve? The marginal social benefits curve will be here. The marginal social benefits. Here we can say that the marginal social benefits for the community is less than the marginal private benefits. Okay? The marginal social benefits is less than the marginal private benefits. Here's the distance between the marginal private benefits, marginal social benefits, is the marginal external benefits. Because, as we mentioned that the marginal social benefits equals the marginal private benefits plus the marginal external benefits. It's sometimes been negative or positive. Here, it's negative because the marginal social benefits is less than the marginal private benefits, so it should be here negative. So, the marginal social benefits here, or the area between the marginal private benefits, marginal social benefits, is the marginal external benefits. Okay? Let's go to the private equilibrium. What is the private equilibrium occurs when for the private sector. For the private sector, the equilibrium occurs when the marginal private benefits equals the marginal private cost. This is the optimum point for the private sector, for the persons who smoke in the community. The efficiency for the private efficiency for the private sector occurs when the marginal private benefits equals the marginal private cost. At this point, let us assume that it's A1 here, and this is the price P1 for cigarettes, and this is the quantity one, the quantity smoked of cigarettes in the community. This point achieves or performs what? The efficiency for the private sector, not for the community as a whole. It's not the social optimum point. Okay? Now, this point, or as we have one supply curve, the supply curve here is the marginal private cost and the marginal social cost. When we have one supply curve, it can be represent, or it can represent, or we can say, call it marginal private cost and the marginal social cost. Okay? In all cases, if we have one supply, we can call it marginal private cost and marginal social cost. If we have one demand curve, it should be marginal private benefits and marginal social benefits. Okay? So here, the marginal the supply curve in this graph represents the marginal private cost and marginal social cost at the same time. Here, in the demand curve, we have marginal private cost, marginal private benefits, marginal social benefits. Okay? Now, where is the best point, the optimum point for the community to consume cigarettes or to smoke cigarettes? It can be represented by the point when the marginal social benefits equals the marginal social cost. For the community, the optimum point, the social optimum point occurs when the marginal social benefits equals the marginal social cost. For the person, for the private sector, occurs when the efficiency, the private efficiency, the private optimum point, when the marginal private benefits equals the marginal private cost. So this is the optimum point for the private sector. And this is the social optimum point, E star. This is P star. And this is the quantity star. So, what do you see? Here we have overconsumption of cigarettes in the community. Okay? To reach the optimality, the social optimal, the country should, or the community should, smoke smaller quantities of cigarettes. Okay? Okay. To determine the situation here under the free market, when there is no government intervention, is there a welfare loss or not? How can we determine if there is a welfare gains or welfare loss? To determine the dead weight loss or the welfare loss under the free market with no government intervention, we have to take a vertical distance from A1 here, the equilibrium point for the private sector, to here the marginal social benefits curve. This area, this triangle here, represents the dead weight loss. So the dead weight loss or the welfare loss can be represented by the area or the triangle between two demand curves, okay, and below supply here. From A1, it's always from A1 to, we can take a vertical distance here. This triangle represents the dead weight loss. What do you see? There is an over-smoking in the community. Let us assume that the community smoke 1,200 units of cigarettes, and the optimal point, the optimal quantity, that the social optimal quantity of smoking must be 800 here, because Q represents the marginal social benefits and the marginal or the equilibrium between, or yes, the cross between the marginal social cost and the marginal social benefits. So the government should intervene to eliminate or to decrease the quantity of cigarettes from 1,200 to 800. How can the government intervene to internalize this situation? It can decrease the marginal private benefits here, which can move the marginal private benefits leftward, or it can decrease supply, which will go or shifts the supply curve to left by imposing taxes. This leads to a decrease in the quantity consumed of cigarettes, and this will lead to increasing the prices of cigarettes. Okay? Type. At the private equilibrium, what do you see? At the private equilibrium here, what do we see? Before we go to dead weight loss here, at A1, the marginal private benefits is bigger than the marginal social benefits. Smooth? At E1 here, at E1, what do you see? This point lies along the marginal private benefits. And here's the marginal social benefits. So the marginal private benefits is bigger than the marginal social benefits. What about the marginal social benefits and the marginal social cost? At E1, at the private equilibrium, this point represents the marginal social cost. And here's the marginal social benefits. So the marginal social cost is bigger than the marginal social benefits. At E1, what do we see? We have two things. At E1 here, this point lies along the marginal private cost. It's bigger than the marginal social benefits. Here's the marginal private cost, and here's the marginal social, marginal private. Marginal private benefits. And this point represents the marginal private benefits and the marginal private cost. The marginal private benefits here is bigger than the marginal social cost, social benefits, and what else? the marginal private cost is bigger than the marginal social cost. Yes, the marginal social cost here is bigger than the marginal social benefits. That's it. How can we make the marginal social cost equals the marginal social benefits? As we mentioned, that the marginal social, let us assume the marginal social benefits cost equals 10. It's bigger than 7. How can we make them equals? We can decrease the marginal social cost or increase the marginal social benefits. Here, the marginal private benefits is bigger than the marginal social benefits. How can we make them equals? We have to decrease or to internalize the situation by imposing taxes or giving banning smoking maybe. Let's correct the situation. How can we correct the situation? How can we decrease the dead weight loss? Here's the dead weight loss. We have to decrease the dead weight loss. We have to what? We have to decrease the smoke the quantity of cigarettes in the community. As the quantity consumed of cigarettes decrease, the dead weight loss decreased. What? Look at me here, please. This is the original situation. This is the initial situation. This is the initial equilibrium point for the private sector, as you see. And this is the dead weight loss or the social welfare loss. How can we eliminate the social welfare loss? By decreasing the smoke quantity of cigarettes. As the quantity 2 here, what do you see? The new dead weight loss becomes here. Decline. As the quantity decline, once again, here's the dead weight loss. As the quantity decreases, here's the dead weight loss. This is the social optimal point, E star. But what are the optimal policies that the government should use to internalize this situation? Okay, this is the major question here. The government can control or achieve, yes, the social optimality by 2 things. Here in this case, it can impose taxes on cigarettes, which leads to a leftward shifting in supply curve. A leftward shifting in supply curve will lead us to a new equilibrium point here. The dead weight loss becomes 0 here. Okay? But we have some implications related to taxes which will be studied here, presented here. Or it can make or issue legislations for banning smoking, for elimination of smoking, for, there are some policies. Sorry? Restrictions. Yes, restrictions for smoking, yes. On smoking, yes. So, this is the, so let's go here let's assume that the government decided to impose taxes on cigarettes. What will happen? Imposing taxes leads to increasing the private cost. Increasing. Or imposing taxes leads to increasing cost of a production or the marginal private cost. So there is a leftward shifting in supply from S1 to S2. So what do you see? Maybe it goes gradually here. until the equilibrium, the social equilibrium is restored. As the government imposed tax, the supply shifts left, once again shifts left, once again shifts left to or until the social equilibrium is restored, or at the point where the new marginal social benefits, or here, until the quantity star is restored. At this point, the price will go up. The price of cigarettes goes up and equals P2 here. And the quantity of smoked cigarettes will decline to Q star. At this point, the social optimality occurs when the imposed taxes equals the marginal external benefits. The negative here. Because here we have marginal external benefits in the negative. Since you know, if you remember that the negative externalities of consumption, the marginal social benefits is less than the marginal private benefits. And as we mentioned, that the marginal private benefit, the marginal social benefits equals marginal private benefits minus marginal external benefits. صح؟ قلنا هيك 7 equals 10 minus 3. The equilibrium occurs when we impose $3 as a tax. صح؟ حط ضريبة ثلاث وحدات بتطلع هاي بتساوي هاي. The marginal external benefits and the negative equals the imposed tax period. تمام؟ بتصير هاي المسافة طلعوا هاي المسافة equals هذا. Otherwise not. Yeah, this triangle will equal this triangle, the area here. In this case, there is a fully internalized for the situation. Okay? So the government has two options to eliminate the deadweight loss or to decrease the quantities, the smoked quantity in the community. It might affect demand, decrease demand for cigarettes by different policies like anti-advertising, like legislations to prevent or to stop smoking or to eliminate smoking in the community, or it can impose taxes, indirect taxes or sales taxes on cigarettes, which can affect supply curve to backward. Okay, so let's go to the options here for the for stop smoking or to eliminate smoking. As you see, banning smoking totally. The government can ban smoking totally, but we have some problems. Number one, banning smoking would have a large effect upon the tobacco industry in terms of the shareholders and employment, as we mentioned. Because banning smoking, in this case, this will create high unemployment, and this will has a negative effect on the shareholders. Number two, the government also make a lot of revenue by taxing cigarettes, which have a price inelastic. Inelastic, which means it can get high revenues because there are no substitutes for cigarettes. So this because are high performing. It must also be remembered that the governments need votes, and the smokers are not likely to vote for the government that bans smoking. Yeah, they need votes and the elections. However, many governments have placed partial bans on smoking in cigarette places. Let's go to taxes on cigarettes. This is the second side or for banning smoking or decreasing, eliminating smoking by imposing taxes, the government could impose indirect taxes on cigarettes in order to reduce consumption of cigarettes. Here's you see the taxes on cigarettes. As we mentioned, this is where is the original where is the original initial equilibrium? Here's the marginal social private. This is this is the marginal private benefits, and this is the marginal private cost or marginal social cost. This is marginal social cost equals the marginal private cost. This is the original situation here. E1. Here is P1 and the Q1. The marginal social benefits is less than the marginal private benefits. So here is the social optimal point. The social optimal quantity of cigarettes must be Q star here. And this is the price P star. To determine the value of dead weight loss, we have to take a vertical distance from A1 to here. Marginal social benefits. This is the dead weight loss or the social welfare loss. How can we decrease the quantity of cigarettes we can, or quantity consumed of cigarettes? This can be solved by imposing taxes. This is the first option for the solution here. We have to impose tax. Imposing taxes leads to a leftward shifting in supply curve, as we mentioned. This is the area, or this area equals this area. Dead weight loss, and under the solution here, the dead weight gains, or gains after the corrective or Pigovian taxes. Pigovian taxes. It's called the Pigovian taxes. Pigovian taxes. corrective taxes بسموها. هذا هيك corrective taxes أو بسموها Pigovian taxes. ضرائب تصحيحية أو هذا لواحد اسمه آرثر بيجو. هذا الايديا نفسها تبعت الكوركشن ترجع لواحد اسمه آرثر بيجو، هو اللي عمل بريزنج للموضوع الكوركتيف والكوركشن او الانترناليزنج للسيتويشن هذا للاكسترناليتيز. اوكي طيب so the Pigovian taxes here leads to leftward shifting and supply. The quantity becomes how much? Q star, and the price goes up to P2. تمام؟ At this point طبعا هذا الاناليسيس اللي اخذناه المارجنال سوشيال بنفيتس، مارجنال سوشيال كوست، مين اكبر من مين، والتاكس must equal the marginal external benefits. تمام؟ طيب let's go to the problems with taxes on cigarettes. As you see here, the inelastic demand for cigarettes tends to mean that taxes don't manage to reduce the quantity demanded very much. And so while the government revenue is raised, the quantity demanded does not fall to the socially efficient. Under the inelastic demand, as you know that the demand for cigarettes is inelastic. Elasticity of demand for cigarettes equals delta QD percent over delta change in the prices and percent. The demand for cigarettes is inelastic, which means let us assume that the government imposed a tax of 10%, increasing taxes by 10%. This leads to increasing the price of cigarettes by 10%. This is an assumption. What will happen to the quantity demanded of cigarettes? It can be decreased or can decrease by maybe decreasing the quantity or the smoked quantity of cigarettes by less than 10%. Maybe 10%, 2%. So, the effect of tax here. So, as the price goes up by 10%, the quantity demanded declines by 0.2 or 2%. Which means that the price will go up, but the quantity will go down by smaller amounts. So, we can expect that the supply curve shifts less or shifts left here by smaller than expected. Because hence the quantity will decline to here from Q1 to Q2, which means that it sometimes may be ineffective, or the effect of taxes is smaller than the other tools maybe. Okay, let's go to something else. If taxes are raised too much, then experience suggests that people start to look for other sources of supply. تدور على substitutes. Yes, exactly. Like shisha. This can be seen in Europe. أو بدور على يعمل importing أو يروح يجيب شو اسمه هذا cigarettes من برا. هيو هيك. This can be seen in Europe, where smokers go to other countries where cigarettes are cheaper. For example, Austrian workers can go over the border to Slovakia because the cigarettes there is cheaper. Sorry? أنا بدور على import taxes على import tariff. بس open هذا in Europe في EU countries open, no taxes, no import tariff. مظبوط؟ طيب. Often this process is illegal, and so the black market may be for black market. طيب. Let's go to our education programs against smoking. This is the second tool can be used by the government to internalize the situation. The government can raise or propose awareness programs for the community for banning smoking, but what about the effectiveness of this tool? The government could provide education about the dangers of smoking and also fund negative advertising in order to reduce demand for cigarettes and thus shifting the marginal private benefits curve to left. Because here we have, let us assume this is the original situation here. دعمل الجراف هيك بس هذا الافكت كان افكت ديماند. التايم خلص. يعطيكم العافيه. خلاص المره الجايه نكمل.